The top 1%, they more than doubled their take of the nation's wealth.
I'm like upper middle class.
And the number of incarcerated women has risen dramatically in recent years.
I find myself laying in bed at night thinking how I can get an ounce of cocaine when I get out, because that's the only thing I see to do.
This is not the usual Dartmouth class.
I'm here for sophomore summer, and it's like the best time of your life.
You get way more. It will change you.
It's a scary place where criminals go, and normal people like me aren't supposed to be going to prison, aren't supposed to be stepping foot in it ever.
You have 4 groups, you're gonna work on 4 skits. These skits, they're gonna be the show.
I hated her. I absolutely hated her from the minute I saw her. She's like what you think the Dartmouth girl is gonna look like. She's beautiful, she's blonde, she has pretty teeth.
Hi. My name is Cigna Taylor, and I'm the director of It's Criminal. And you can watch the rest of our trailer online and the film on Canopy. The reason that I'm standing here and that we showed this clip is that the film It's Criminal features our next 3 speakers. It documents the class taught by Ivy Schweitzer and Pati Hernandez and shares the story of Charlotte Rankin. I was drawn to documenting Pati and Ivy's work because in this time, which I think we all know is pretty divided and I think also full of a lot of prejudice and a lot of fear, Pati and Ivy do an amazing job creating a space and platform for people from very different backgrounds to connect. I personally had an intense experience with connection the first time I filmed one of their prisoner-student collaborations at Windsor Prison. And that was the first time I'd ever gone inside a correctional facility, which is a very daunting experience if you haven't had it. And as I was filming, I noticed that one of the performers looked a lot like me. She was similar in age to me, she had a similar haircut, similar diction, dressed all in black. I thought that she was a late-in-life Dartmouth student, perhaps, maybe a mother exploring her creative side. But then when the performance ended and the testimonials began, which is when student and prisoners share the impact of the class on them, I learned more about her. She said she was an experimental filmmaker, and I thought, oh, well, I'm not surprised. And then she said that she had made a film about the exact geographic center of the United States, and that was where her life had started to go awry. She revealed that she was, in fact, imprisoned, and she said her age was 42, which was my age at the time, and then she talked about the length of her sentence, which was 7 years, and she said what made her most sad was that she would never have a biological child. And I was in shock when she said that, and I finished filming the performance, and I packed up my equipment, and I went to my car, and I cried. And I cried for my 2 beautiful children at home, and I cried for the ones that she would never have. And I cried because she could be me, and I could be her. And although I'd always known that in my head, that there's no difference between me and someone on the inside, I had never felt it in my core, in my heart. So that's Pati and Ivy for you. They're life-changing from the minute you meet them. And that's Charlotte, too, who has an incredible ability in a very quiet and forceful way to speak truth to power. So please join me in welcoming Pati, Ivy, and Charlotte.
I'm Ivy Schweitzer. I'm a professor of English and Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies at Dartmouth College. As a feminist academic, I've always been committed to social justice, and as a teacher of literature, I've always been alive to the power of stories. But meeting Pati and working with her program, Telling My Story, rocked the foundations of my academic world. It challenged me to take thinking out of the abstract realm and into the concrete realm of feeling and doing, to involve the spirit and the heart, as well as the head and the mind. This is considered radical for higher education, but it shouldn't be. Our collaboration really taught me something about our connections across differences. These were differences of culture. Pati is from Chile, educational opportunity, and temperament. And we used this collaboration to create an academic course that we still teach at Dartmouth called Telling My Stories, in which we work with populations in crisis to identify the visible and invisible walls that separate us. I used to think that I was so different from those populations, and then I realized that we all need rehabilitation. So this is how it happened. In the late 1990s, I was at a lecture here at Dartmouth given by Angela Davis, one of my intellectual and political heroes, and she was challenging all of us to include issues about prison and prison abolition in our teaching and our research. At the time, I didn't know anybody in prison, and I didn't really know that we had a problem with prisons, but I was so inspired by her talk that I immediately went and created a unit on incarcerated women in my upcoming feminist theory class. But because my knowledge of this subject was so theoretical, I really wanted somebody who worked on the ground in correctional facilities who could join the class. And I asked around the Upper Valley, and everybody said, you must meet Pati. That was 2005. Pati was working with men in a prison up in Newport, Vermont, and we have been working and learning together ever since. What I realized from our collaboration is that we cannot ignore our differences, just as we cannot ignore our privileges, but we can and we must acknowledge them and turn them towards the goal of humanizing, dehumanizing situations.
Hello, my name is Charlotte, and as a child, I grew up in an abusive and painful environment where you didn't share your emotions, your pain, your shame, or your guilt. It felt very cold and compassionless, and I'd always felt alone, but mostly misunderstood and insignificant. I ran away from home the first time when I was about 11. I was picked up 3 states away and promptly returned home, and the authorities had just assumed that I was a problem child. Nobody asked. Nobody asked why an 11-year-old felt that the cold and unknown streets were safer than her home. Nobody. Not that it would have helped much. My mother taught me early on in life to keep people on what she liked to call a need-to-know basis, meaning you only share what you absolutely have to and never to share personal information. By my early 20s, I had experienced multiple traumas that I had never dealt with. Most I never even spoke of. A few I had made comments in passing to my family, but I had felt so much shame and embarrassment over the abuse that I wasn't really able to process all of these feelings and emotions, and I also felt like I had deserved and was responsible for this abuse, and I was never really told differently. So I think turning to drugs for me was like a natural progression, and I was in desperate need of help with addiction, and at the time, the only option for me was prison. I had no health insurance, and I did not have the money for a private rehabilitation facility, and I kind of felt that society had failed me twice, first as a child, and again now as a young adult. I can be the first to tell you that there is no room for low-income addicts without insurance or privilege in our communities. And there's no room for people with mental health disorders in our communities. And I feel that the stigmas surrounding the issues like incarceration, addiction, and mental health are more debilitating and paralyzing than anybody's willing to talk about. I was lucky enough to participate with the Telling My Story program in 2010 while the documentary It's Criminal was being filmed. And the experience changed my life, the way that I look at myself and the rest of the world around me. I learned of fears and judgments that I had held of other people, judgments that I didn't even know existed. Pati taught me how to hold those fears and hold that judgment, to let go of preconceptions, because I somehow had this image in my mind that my pain was greater than the students, and I was wrong. All pain is valid and can connect us on some level. I was able to learn that it was okay to be vulnerable and to trust, and with that, human connections began that I had never dreamt possible, and I kind of started to have faith in people again.
My name is Pati Hernandez, and I am the creator and facilitator of Telling My Story, an interdisciplinary arts program that works on the development of self-awareness and communication skills through the arts, by putting the arts to the service of the situation. I'm also an adjunct professor and the director of Telling My Story on campus at Dartmouth College. This is kind of my official introduction that I put together and I learned by heart over the years in order to look clean and professional in my delivery. But I want to share something else with you. I am actually very nervous and quite intimidated in this platform. So Ivy was the one that had the idea to join TEDx. She said, we certainly have a lot to say about the theme of living bridges. And I thought she was right, but I said, no, no, no. That's not what I do. And then I thought, hold on a second. This is actually something, one of Ivy's platforms. And I remember all those times over the years that Ivy had been right next to me in platforms that were not easy or comfortable for her. And I realized how important it was for me to take this challenge and to also go beyond my comfort zone, which is something that I'm always asking my collaborators to do. And I saw that my defensive reaction was an expression of my intellectual insecurity. I've always felt undervalued because of my limited formal education. I am a physical education teacher. I'm also a self-taught, and I would add a feisty doer. So seeing myself in this situation, it really fueled my agency even more to take the challenge and embrace this vulnerable platform. It feels really good and empowering to be here.
But it wasn't always good and empowering for the students or for me. It took us way out of our comfort zone. In fact, the course is fraught with confusion, even chaos, self-doubt, and what is the current F word in academia, failure. Students, and especially faculty, are not supposed to fail, especially in elite institutions. Failure seems to many people to make us vulnerable and weak. But in fact, dealing with failure, coping with our imperfections and our limitations is a crucial part of the learning process, though not often included on college curriculum. Just think back to when you went to college. What did people tell you? They told you, take risks, dare to be great, grab your dreams, go for the stars. Did anybody advise you to be thoughtful or thankful? To speak your truth with humility, to be humble, to listen deeply to other people and respond to them, to think about community and work for the common good. I believed all this in theory, but it really ran counter to my academic training. How could I grade students on something as vague and subjective as attitude or presence or coping with failure? Pati grounds her experiential method in the thinking of the Brazilian philosopher Paulo Freire, whose incomparable book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, became the bedrock of our work. Freire discusses this dilemma that I was having between theory and praxis, and he says, I quote, "For apart from inquiry, apart from the praxis, individuals cannot be truly human. Knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention, through the restless, impatient, continuing, hopeful inquiry human beings pursue in the world, and with each other." Still, it was years before I would acknowledge that the practice part of the course, that is the organic work that the students and inmates or residents did together outside of the classroom, should count equally, 50%, with the more traditional classroom activities, the theory part of the course that is reading, writing, and discussion. What I came to realize is what happens when we really integrate theory and praxis, or as Freire calls it, action and reflection. It produces not compassion, as some people argue, but something much more profound. It produces a gut-level recognition of our shared humanity.
So up until that point in my life, jail had been the most dehumanizing experience for me. And I had laid awake in my bunk each night asking myself, like, how did I get here? And what steps could I have taken that might have led me down a different, better path? And I kept thinking of the students and their stories, and I noticed that we had all experienced profound pain on some level. And each day we were able to name that pain, anger, shame, or discomfort that we had all felt at one point in our lives. You know, and here I was in this oppressive environment, you know, feeling compassion for the first time. And it was just such a weird experience to reclaim my voice and to be treated as a human and not a criminal or an addict or a victim. And I think in that moment, I saw myself as a person of value and not just the mistakes that have labeled me along the way. And I had never felt such an experience of self-empowerment before. And I learned that my voice has power and that my story has meaning. And it isn't just my story, it's the story of so many women who are just like me, but also so unlike myself. And I felt like I had somehow bridged this great divide between myself and the rest of the world around me. And again, here I was feeling deep, real human connections, which was another first experience for me. And now I feel like I just want every woman to know what self-empowerment feels like and how important it is that we stand up and reach out to one another, to not be afraid of the unknown, almost to embrace it. And I think we need to realize that it's society that's failing us, not us, that the laws and the policies are actually written to keep the underprivileged always in a state of underprivilege. And I feel that we need to stand up and collectively use our voice to change these laws and policies that make addiction a punishable criminal act. We need to make mental health care accessible for everybody. But most important, we need to realize that every criminal, addict, or mental health patient is a person with feelings and emotions and really should be treated as such.
When I first went inside a correctional facility 20 years ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I wanted justice inside the prisons, and I wanted it right away. It didn't take me long to realize how clueless I was. But to this, I need to add something. I believe prisons are punitive and not rehabilitating, and they are, to me, the epitome of racism and social abandonment. I also could see that many of my assumptions were based on this ongoing judgment of others. So I embarked in this journey in where vulnerability led my way, and it became an empowering practice. I hang out with people for hours and hours without really knowing where the whole thing was going to go. I felt lost and not really clear to what I was actually trying to do. I made many mistakes, many mistakes. And by the way, I still do. But I also learned to value the importance of muddiness and imperfection. And I realized that waiting and not having an agenda can take me really long way. And that analysis is definitely not enough. But when I'm willing to put myself in the middle of the situation, I can see what part I play in it and how I contribute on a regular basis to the building of social walls. So, in other words, I learned how to smell the shit. With this very bold attitude is what took me to where I am now. I learned how to accept and trust the process as it needed to be, and not as I had envisioned it or I wanted it to be. So we began to dare to trust one another, and together we learned how to value our humanity. When students joined the collaboration, I was quite surprised to see that there was no much difference in the process. It was then when I realized that we are all part of a profoundly wounded society. So patience, trust, love, compassion, and empathy became important and powerful tools in this effort to come together to build something different. And it has been a wonderful experience to see how everybody so badly wants to imagine and create something significantly better and different to what we have right now. So the challenge here is, how do we take all this out in the world to make it more accessible? I believe if we come together to make this work extraordinary and ordinary at the same time.
How can I facilitate the social and intellectual mobility of the people around me?
And if I have more, does that mean that somebody else has less?
How can I reconcile what I am inside with what I have to be out in the world in order to survive?
How can we live from day to day in an unjust world?
And when is enough enough?
Why does it feel that trying to be perfect is more important than trying to be honest and truthful?
I wonder, is this just words, or can we really imagine and create a better world?
I wonder what opportunity looks like to somebody else.
I wonder what it would be like if we were not so afraid of one another.
Thank you.
you.